Hey, so I am back as promised to talk about the rest of the astrology for this weekend. Same beanie, different top, so let's get into it. I wanted to make sure that you guys had some of this information before you go into your Saturday night. So this is the second of 3 videos that I'm going to be putting out about this weekend. The last video is going to really go into the new moon and the transits that are leading up to and surrounding that because it's really important. This particular video is going to talk about something that is probably something that you might be experiencing and feeling already or seeing out in the world already. However, it's going to kind of start this train of transits that's going to take us into the new moon, which is the like bookend of this weekend, leading into like Monday morning, right? So thought it was important that I got this out early because the third video is probably not going to be out until around evening tonight. So I want to make sure that you guys had this. So what are we talking about for this weekend? What is starting this train? So we have Mars in Scorpio, where it's at home, in opposition to Uranus in Taurus. And oppositions are, like squares, very tense aspects. They are difficult aspects. And let's just break down the planetary energies so that you have an idea of how these two are mixing together, right? So we're talking about Uranus, which is disruptive. It can be disruptive in a really good way or disruptive in a not so great way, but it's usually surprising. It's like kind of, I didn't see that coming out of nowhere. Earthquake type energy, very electric, definitely about like liberation and looking out for the misfits and the marginalized in general, but also just tends to be, well, also a planet of innovation and the very like electric kind of mind, right? But we're talking about, when we're talking about any kind of planet that is in a position where they are being aspected in a way that's difficult, we're looking at their kind of more dark or harder aspects coming to the forefront, right? So unexpected, sudden, explosive, liberating can be, and disruptive can be great, and it can also fall onto that shadow side, right? So keep that in mind. Now we're talking about Mars. Mars in its home sign of Scorpio, one of its homes, right? So just like we talked about with Libra, when a planet is in its home, it is very well resourced. So Mars has everything he needs to do what he wants, and he is stoked about it. He's like, oh yes. And in Scorpio, he is like the ninja warrior, right? With or without a cause, the rebel with or without a cause, right? But needing to grind against something, like needing a common enemy to come up against, whether that is in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way. But it can be also about anger, rage, explosiveness, right? Like these are other qualities of Mars. We have really lovely qualities that Mars has, right? Like drive and will and libidinous, interesting energy, which I love. But when we're talking about them coming up against each other, going kind of like toe to toe in this opposition, what we see is these two energies clashing. So you think about like that contentious, like hot energy of Mars coming up against Uranus and them going toe to toe. And what you have is the potential for some really volatile and explosive type of energy. Mars in Scorpio also, besides being ninja-like, is kind of like a, I was reminded of this recently, is like a poison. It's like insidious. And so it's very volatile, very caustic, potentially very surprising and very difficult kind of energy. So oppositions as aspects tend to be more relational, more outward focused, right? So something that you might be seeing in the world, something that you might be experiencing through other people. Yes, you could be feeling it yourself, of course. Yes, that also. Something to note, if you're familiar with your chart, if you're someone who like has your natal chart and you happen to know, if you look at 21 degrees of either Taurus or Scorpio and you have planets in your natal chart that are around maybe like 3 degrees, 5 degrees, 3 to 5 degrees of either one of those, so 21 degrees Scorpio, 21 degrees Taurus, then you might be feeling this more intensely or noticing this more intensely, right? Because these are, like, when we're talking about these aspects, anytime I'm doing these videos, we're talking about them from a place of like, this is collective, and yes, we should notice that, but that's why some people are like, oh, I didn't even notice, I didn't even feel it, or some people are like, I felt that one really strongly, is because of your natal chart. So that's just a little pro tip. Check out your chart, see if that's there. Okay, one other thing that we need to talk about, which is there is this forming square between Lilith and your not Uranus, and Mars as well. Okay, so another aspect that I want to talk about really quickly is that in the background we have a forming square between Lilith and Mars. So Lilith is currently retrograde. She's coming out of that retrograde, and the transits that I'm talking about today in this video, and also the one that I'm putting out later, are taking us through the 13th, right? So this is something that's happening during this time frame, and I felt like it was important to talk about Lilith starting to square, which is another hard aspect, starting to square Mars. So Lilith is there's a lot of things about Lilith, but Lilith in her more shadowy form can be probably a little bit I don't give a fuck, like, this is all, you know, I'm gonna do it my way, and she can be like that in general, which obviously has its PowerPoints, right? To be able to say, I know myself, I'm gonna do it my way, I'm going to empower myself to do whatever it is in life, right? And I'm going to not listen to the structures or the, like, society as far as like how I should do that, and that can be really beneficial and empowering. And on the shadow side, it can be maybe a little bit stubborn and short-sighted. It can be a little reactive and kind of impulsive, in the similar way that Mars in his shadow can be really impulsive in as far as like action and just like lunging forward, right? So when we see the two of them coming into this square, you can mix those kinds of energies together and see how that might even color this more. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because usually what we feel when we're experiencing transits, this is why some people will say, oh, I was feeling whatever people were talking about with the full moon or the new moon like 2 days before or a day before, right? And that's because usually leading up to a transit, and any of you who've been following me have heard me say this, but leading up to a transit, that is the like pressurized time. That's where we start to really feel or see the themes of what is showing up here. Like, that's when we see it. So I wanted to bring this up because I feel like it does play a part. How does this all come together? Why am I bringing all this up? Why did I want to make sure that you guys had at least this video before you go out tonight with whatever plans you have? Mainly because I think that it would be a mistake to allow yourself to be in situations or conversations that have the potential for any kind of explosiveness. I think that it would be wise to check yourself when you feel yourself boiling up and you feel like, if you can catch it before it boils over with whatever kind of emotion you're feeling strongly, catch that, go take a breath, like take a beat, breathe, right? And if you notice other people are in that situation, then you also want to make sure that you are just being aware of your surroundings, aware of how other people are presenting themselves, reacting, maybe not catching themselves, maybe not being super conscious. You know, it's like, go out on the weekend, people are having drinks or they're having whatever else, and it's you know, certain kinds of safeguards get kind of taken away in those situations. And this is one of those weekends where I would say, watch yourself. Don't walk to your car by yourself. Don't take any chances with people that you think might be a little edgy. Like, this would not be that weekend to do that for anyone. So I would say minimize your risks and just be aware of this energy. It's more a safety precaution that I want people to have this information so that you can check yourself, so you don't go blowing up on people, ruining relationships, but also so that you can be understanding and kind of go, oh, look, that's what's happening when you see other people doing it, and find a way to remove yourself in a way that's more conscious, and also be very safe, be very aware of your surroundings and where you go this weekend. Beware of driving, get an Uber, do whatever you need to do to safeguard. It's just